All right, welcome everybody. It's showtime. Good evening to
Good
all of you
evening.
out there in Takeo After Dark land. I'm John
You,
Barba with my cohort, Dave Holdorf.
in the background, we also have Tim Ward and John Messenbrink from Mechanical Hub. And hey, guys, thanks for hosting this again. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thank
And
you guys.
no, thanks for having us. And I think we would be remiss on November 11th to first thank all of our veterans out there on Veterans Day. And if you served, thank you very much for your service. Ultimate respect. And if you had friends or family who served, and same message out to them. It's an important day and one we should always remember. And for our friends north of the border, it's Remembrance Day to honor those. First off, to honor those in Flanders Field who died during World War I, but it's used for honoring the veterans of all service. So for our folks up in Canada as well, fond wishes for Remembrance Day. I wanted to share this with you just on a personal level because my sister posted this on Facebook today, and I wanted to share it because these are my uncles, my 5 uncles who all passed on, but they were all on inactive duty during World War II, all at the same time. The 2 guys on the right-hand side, Sergeant Mike and PFC Anthony or Tony, they were in Europe during from D-Day onwards. In combat duty, and my Uncle Mike actually won the Bronze Star, I believe. Uncle Frank was on an aircraft carrier. Uncle Fred was he was a major actually, and he was in the Army Air Corps, stationed in England. And John, the oldest, who's my namesake, he was in the Navy, and he was flying in dirigibles, in blimps, guarding the coast, looking for submarines. And in fact, Uncle John was on the ground crew in Lakehurst, New Jersey, the day the Hindenburg blew up. And he lived on or near the base for the rest of his life. That was his home. And he actually, if you ever see any old, documentaries on the Hindenburg, chances are because he lived near the base all his life, he was always interviewed on the news and on these documentaries. So if you ever see him, if you ever see one of those, and you see this guy John Iannacone, that's my Uncle John. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I'm sure we all have our own story, our own personal stories of your own service or those of loved ones, and mad respect for all of that. And again, thank you for your service. Tonight, we'll get back now that we've done the serious stuff. Let's get back to the business at hand, which is Takeo After Dark, the Fall Edition, Part 7. And we're going to talk about the real value of variable speed circulators. And you're watching our webcams. I'm guessing tonight's theme between Dave and I. It's Batman and Robin. And we're not talking about the movie versions, because I'm sorry, if you're my age anyway, you look at the movie versions and you just say, you know what, that's not Batman. Batman was Adam West and Burt Ward, way back when in the 60s. Very colorful, very campy with all the great villains. That's Batman. So that's what we're going to honor tonight. And of course, since I have the microphone, I'm Batman. And Dave, you're going to be Robin.
All right. You got it.
All righty. And you'll know Rick is not with us. Today is Rick's birthday. And Rick's wife has plans for him tonight. So I don't know what that means, but Rick will not be with us here this evening. He's going to be out celebrating his birthday and having a grand old time, I'm sure. And if he were here, I'm guessing because he's kind of the grown-up of the group and the smartest of the 3 of us, he might be Commissioner Gordon. I'm thinking, what do you guys think? Is he going more on the lines of Commissioner Gordon?
Yeah, I would call him that. Yeah, that's not a bad. Yeah.
I couldn't cast him as a villain.
Or the Riddler.
The Riddler. I couldn't cast. I don't know if I could cast cast Rick as a villain. I'm not sure. He's one of the good guys, All righty. Well, let's get to work, okay? Last week was our Princess Bride week, and we talked about the truths and myths of ECM and variable speed circulators. We talked about delta T and delta P, and we made this point. No matter what variable speed circulator you use, they're not magic. It all comes down to system curves and pump performance curves. Okay, it's all system curves and pump performance curves, no matter what. Now, tonight we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into that to really get an idea of how they work and how they deal with the various issues that come up. The biggest one we're going to address is the incredible shrinking delta T. We've talked about that several times over the course of the program, right? As time goes on, as the heating system runs, and as it gets warmer and warmer out, a pump is still running at the same speed, but the BTU load keeps going down. Therefore, the delta T starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we know what happens when the delta T starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, we create more and more of a short cycling situation, which kills efficiency and ultimately kills moving parts and systems. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and we're going to discuss, once we have that information, how do we pick the right variable speed circulator, and how do we set it up so it's going to work the best way possible. So that's kind of our goal for tonight. So let's get to work. And as Robin would ask Batman, why does the delta T shrink so incredibly? What makes it an incredible shrinking delta T? Robin, do you have any idea?
No, I got to get the magnifying lens out. Where to put that? Yeah, I can see that right there on the side.
There you go. I thought you'd say something like, like wholly overpumping Batman. That would be the right answer.
That would have been, yeah.
Yeah, but say we're not that quick.
I didn't get into it fast.
You got to embrace the role, young man. Well, boy wonder it's math. That's why the delta T shrinks so incredibly. It's math, okay? It's math. Let's say I have a 70,000 BTU zone valve system, okay? And as you can see, I have a bunch of system curves here like we talked about last week. And we know, because we know the universal hydronics formula, right? GPM equals BTUH divided by delta T times 500. We know that if this system is designed to a delta T of 20 degrees, we know the flow rate we're going to need to make this thing work. And that flow rate is going to be 7 gallons per minute, right? 7 gallons per minute equals 70,000 BTUs divided by 20 times 500, or 10,000. 70,000 divided by 10,000, 7 gallons per minute flow rate. And we also do the math for the head loss throughout that system. And the worst case zone in that system has a head loss of 5 feet ahead. So where do I need it to work? I need the system to work right there. All right, 7 gallons a minute at 5 feet ahead. That's where I need it to work. But where is it really going to work? Well, it's going to work where the system curve for all zones calling intersects the pump curve of the circulator I'm using. In this case, we're using a typical 3-speed circulator, whether it's a Takeo standard efficiency 0015, a Grundfos 1558, you name it. They're all basically the same in terms of performance. All right, we're actually going to operate here, and that looks to be at about 9.5 gallons per minute at about 8 feet ahead. All right, that's where it's actually going to work. So again, we can do the math to find out what, at that flow rate, what will the delta T actually be? Because this, of course, is an algebraic formula. And again, we hated middle school algebra, right, with a passion, but understand that using that algebra, we can kind of isolate for any variable we want. So with a little manipulation, we can isolate for delta T. So delta T in this case equals BTUH divided by GPM divided by 500. So that's 70,000 BTUs divided by the 9.5 gallons per minute I'm using to deliver those 70,000 BTUs divided by 500. And that comes out to a best case delta T of 14 degrees. What does that mean? That means on the coldest day of the year, design conditions, the very best delta T I'm ever going to see in this system is 14 degrees. I'm not going to see 20, not no way, not no how, because I'm over pumping, right? So that means, what does that mean? That means the water's going out at 180 and coming back at 166 instead of 160. Or even worse, in a modulating system, a low temperature system with a mod-con boiler, maybe the water's going out at 140 and coming back at 126 instead of 120. It's not going to condense quite as much. And in both cases, you know what's going to happen with the short cycling. All right. Now let's take a look at the smallest zone. That smallest zone right here is about 1 gallon a minute at 4 feet ahead. That's the single smallest zone. Where does it really work? It's really going to work way the heck up here. All right, at about 2 gallons a minute at 17 feet ahead. Now forget about the banging zone valves that we talked about last week for a minute. Let's focus on the 2 gallons per minute. And what does that tell us about the delta T? So now it's 10,000 BTUs divided by 2 gallons per minute divided by 500. In that case, the very best delta T I'm going to see under those circumstances is 10 degrees. So on the coldest day of the year, when that boiler should be cycling the longest, on that coldest day of the year, when the boiler should be cycling the longest, the delta T is going to be bopping back and forth between 10 and 14 degrees, right? Between 10 and 14 degrees. Now, what happens if we actually go, when it starts to warm up? Well, let's say we're at 50% load. Okay, so that's 5,000 with the smallest zone and 35,000 with the biggest zone. I'm going to be bopping back and forth between 5 and 7 degrees worth of delta T. And beyond that, pretty much most of the heating season, I'm going to have a delta T of less than 5. I want to make sure you guys understand why that is and what that means. Okay, give me some feedback on it if you understand what we're talking about here. No one is ever going to call you up and tell you that they're freezing to death because of this and they're blaming you. That's not going to happen. You're going to deliver the BTUs. That's not even a question. You're never going to get accused of not providing BTUs. And here's the other thing. No one's ever going to call you up and say, hey, pal, you promised me a 20-degree delta T. It's only 7. Get your butt out here and fix it now. You're never going to get that phone call either. They're not sending the bat signal up, getting you to come on back to help them out. They don't care. All they care about is whether they get heat or not, right? But what are we doing? What are we doing to this system? Boy wonder, what are we doing to this system?
Short cycling it to death.
We are short cycling it to death. It's like we got this big old shark grabbing onto our cape. So why does the delta T shrink? It shrinks because we're over pumping and we're on a fixed speed circulator, or better yet, a fixed performance curve circulator, as we'll see. On a fixed performance curve circulator, it's always working there. The system has to do what that curve says. The system has to do what that curve says. So as the load goes down, the flow stays the same, and the delta T has to shrink. As the BTU load goes down, the flow rate stays the same. It's math. It's math. Okay, it's not math for math's sake. It's a scientific analysis of what happens. The delta T has to get smaller. So again, guys, no matter what anybody tells you, it's all about pump curves and system curves. All right, and GPM equals BTUH divided by delta T times 500. It never changes. This is the rule. Okay, this is the law. No matter what anybody says. All right. And again, as Dave says, the ultimate result is short cycling. And short cycling kills efficiency, but what else does short cycling do? Let's get to see what you guys have to say. What else does short cycling do out there to systems? Type in your answers and we'll continue along, because I think we're going to be early with our trivia question tonight, actually. So yeah, it's going to waste a lot of fuel. It's going to waste a lot of fuel, says Carl, and a lot of money. And you're going to wears out all the switching components, right? It's really hard on the equipment. You shut short cycling things, you're going to wear them out. So if you've ever replaced an igniter, an ignition module, some sort of a relay or a switch, or even like a blower motor and a ModCon boiler, all those things are dying because we've cycled into an early grave. It's not because the components themselves are crapola anymore. All right, it's wear and tear on the system, and that we can prevent that. All right, we can prevent that. Okay, here's a good question: is this not resolved by closely spaced T's in a primary secondary system? Good question, Matthew. And the answer there is no, because this still happens out on the this can still happen when that warmer water comes back to the boiler. Well, that's just warmer water coming back to the boiler, right? And in terms of over pumping the delivery system, whether it's a primary, secondary, closely spaced T's or not, that's what we have. That's kind of what we have. All right.
And actually, with a primary, secondary piping, you'll actually get a more short cycling occurring than you would in a straight supply return if you had a cast iron boiler. Right, because now that water's coming back, the idea of the primary secondary is to keep the water warmer coming back to it on a cast iron world. We do it for the heat, the pressure drop of the heat exchanger, but it actually makes it worse by doing it that way compared to a straight supply return.
Right. And again, people aren't freezing to death, but they're not getting the system they paid for. They paid for a high efficiency system that's going to last a long time. And quite frankly, they're not getting it. All right. They're just not getting it. It's not, that boiler is never going to be as efficient as it could or should be. All righty. We're early on this, but we're going to do our Takeo trivia question. We're going to do that right now. And this is a good one. This is a really good one. And it's Batman. Okay. Now, Batman was the defining role of Adam West's acting career. Yes, I know he was on Family Guy, okay, as the mayor of Quahog, but that was just an artist rendition. This was his high point in his acting career. However, Adam West was also offered another iconic role, but he turned it down. What was that role? What was that role? It wasn't as a dancer on American Bandstand, as you can see. But what was the role that Adam West turned down? It's a good one. That's a good one. All righty. I'm sure everybody's Googling and no longer paying attention to the show, but that's all. That's just the way it goes. All right. That's just the way it goes. All righty. Let's get back to work. And again, we have to point out the circulator's in charge. Okay. The circulator's the thing that's in charge of the entire system. When it's a fixed performance curve, okay, notice I didn't say fixed speed. When it's at a fixed performance curve, it is in charge of the system, meaning the system has to do what the pump says. It has to operate on that performance curve. So the circulator is in charge, and the bigger the pump, the bigger the problem. The more we over pump, the more of a problem we're going to create for ourselves, all right? So now the question is, all right, if I use a variable speed pump, do I just throw a variable speed pump in there and it takes care of everything? Well, no, that's obviously too simplified. We can use variable speed pumps to help this situation to varying degrees, but again, it depends on if we know how these things work and how we are employing them and how we set them up. So that, again, there's no solution that you just throw in there and press a magic button and it figures it out for you. That's as fictional as Batman and Robin. Okay, it just doesn't work that way. You got to know what you're doing with these things, and you got to know why you're putting this thing in and why you're asking it to do what you're asking it to do. All right. Once we get a hold of that, once we get control of that, we can utilize these circulators to do some really cool things for our systems, but we got to understand them first. That's the important part. All right. So let's take a look at the VT2218. That's our Delta T pump. That's a Delta T pump, all right? Meaning it's a circulator. It's a Delta T circulator. It's a variable speed circulator, and it varies its speed while it's trying to maintain a specific Delta T within the system. So say this system has been designed for a Delta T of 20 degrees. Well, we put a sensor on the supply, we put a sensor on the return. The circulator itself is already programmed for a 20-degree Delta T. Now you can change it based on the design of the system, anywhere from 5 to 50, but it comes programmed at 20. So you put these sensors on, and basically the sensors are looking at the temperature of the water going out, the temperature of the water coming back, and it's varying its speed to keep the difference between the two at 20. Doesn't care what the water temperature is. It doesn't set the water temperature. It doesn't require a specific water temperature. So it doesn't interfere with your outdoor reset in any way, shape, or form. It only cares about the difference between what's going out and what's coming back. That's all it cares about. So as long as there's a difference there, it's fine. It can read that, and it adjusts its speed to maintain that as best it can. All right, so let's take a look at that zone valve system we were talking about earlier that was 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead. So 7 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead, that is where that system's going to operate. That's where that circulator, okay, line B, that's our maximum speed, and line A is the minimum speed. So 7 gallons a minute, 5 foot ahead. It's going to find its happy spot right here, and that's the speed it's going to run. So we have a minimum wattage of 9 down here and a maximum of 59. So right in here, that looks like probably about 30 watts. So on maximum speed, it's going to run about 30 watts. Our smallest zone's right here, 1 at 4. So this is where it's going to run with just that one smallest zone calling under design conditions, and that looks maybe about 12 watts, let's call it. So as zones close, under design conditions, coldest day of the year, as zones close, the pump's going to slow down, slow down, slow down until that one smallest one is open. And then from the smallest zone, if that's the only one calling, and other zones open, then it's going to go faster, faster, faster until all zones are calling. And it's going to bop back and forth between these two lines as zones open and close on the coldest day of the year. Now, as it gets warmer out, both of these lines are going to drop. Both of these lines are going to come down as the circulator goes slower. See, now the circulator is going to change its speed not only based on zones opening and closing, but as we said last week, it's going to change speed based on the weather. It's based on BTU load, okay? It's inferring the load. It doesn't have an outdoor sensor. It doesn't know what the outdoor temperature is, but as it gets warmer out, the BTU load goes down, right? GPM equals BTUH divided by delta T times 500. If the delta T is fixed and the BTUH load goes down, the flow has to go down as well. So as it gets warmer out, this maximum speed is going to drop and this minimum speed is going to drop, but eventually both are just going to hit that minimum speed line, all right? Both are going to hit that minimum speed line, and at some point, you're going to have a fixed speed 9-watt pump. It's not a bad thing, but it is what it is. At what point will that happen? Well, let's take a look at 50% load. 50% load is 35,000 BTUs, 3.5 gallons per minute. If we extrapolated out the system curve, all right, 3.5 gallons per minute at about 1 foot ahead, that's where it wants to operate, but we have a minimum, right? You can't go slower than minimum. It's going to work there. So at some point before you reach 50% load, that's going to be a fixed speed 9-watt pump. It's not a bad thing. We're not always going to have a 20-degree delta T in this case. It's going to be impossible. But the thing is, we're not going to have a 5-degree delta T either. That's the point. Okay, that's the point. Let me know if you have any questions here, gang, on how this thing operates. Okay, it's kind of a cool pump. A lot of people look at it and say, well, that's a self-sizing pump then. I don't know, Dave, what would you say? Would you say it's a self-sizing pump? Robin?
I'd say it's the
go.
closest you can get to a circ that can figure out the flow that you need. However, it is a bigger pump. So if you like to zone by pumps, it may not be the right pump for you because it might be too big. You don't have enough adjustability out of it because your flow designs are not going to be big enough. But it is probably one of the closest circulators you can get to, so to speak. Put it in and let it figure it out for you. All right. I hate that terminology. I don't like to use it, but it's the closest you can get to it. Yeah.
Right. And as Dave was saying, zone pumping, if I need, 2 gallons a minute at 4 foot ahead, yeah, okay. It's going to, under design conditions, it'll run right there. All right. But as it warms up, and within, not very long, not much warmer than design conditions, we're a full speed, fixed speed pump. It's a 9-watt pump, and that's cool, but it is what it is, right? I'm hearing beeps in my headphones, Dave. My headphones batteries might go out on me in a few seconds. So if that happens, you can take over while I fix it. I'll let you know.
Okay, great. Yes.
So that's the delta T story. The bigger the zone valve system, or even the bigger the zone pump, the better off you're going to be. As it gets smaller, the advantages start to minimize themselves. Now let's take a look at again, the tail of the tape. We do our very best with this circulator to maintain a fixed delta T for as much of the heating season as we can. That improves boiler performance and heat delivery. You've got a big LCD screen there for very, very easy programming. There's that LCD will display the supply and return temperatures for you because you have sensors there, so you don't need to put any gauges or anything on there. The circulator will tell you that. And you have three other optional modes to operate it on. It could be a fixed speed pump. You could set it up to 1 of 4 fixed speeds if you wanted to. You could reverse it and use it in the chilled water mode. And you could also use it in a set point mode, which is kind of cool. Then you just use one sensor and the circulator will vary its speed to maintain a target temperature in something. All right. The most common use we see with that is with
coils.
air handlers, right? You put that sensor in the airstream of the air handler and you want to maintain a specific temperature there. Well, then that's what it'll do. It'll maintain a specific temperature there. So
and if I can interrupt there, think about that for a second though, because what's the biggest complaint with a wet coil system that you have installed in a home? All right, is the air temperature goes up and down to the homeowners, right? They feel a little bit of cold air, then it gets warmed up again, so it goes back and forth. You put that temperature sensor in the airstream, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, it's going to speed up and down and maintain a consistent air temperature. So it is a really unique way to do that there. The second half that you can do with that set point temperature is using it, say, in a snowmelt system. Smaller snowmelts is where I've used it before. And in lieu of a mixing device and an expensive controller to modulate the water temperature going out to the snowmelt, I will take the VT circulator, put it on the boiler side of the heat exchanger using a flat plate heat exchanger on the boiler side, take the temperature sensor, put it on the snowmelt side. On the snowmelt side, fixed speed circulator. So as the load changes on the snowmelt side, that circulator is going to speed up and down to maintain that fixed temperature going out to the snowmelt. So it is a pretty neat way to use it in that respect too.
Got a couple of questions here about the Delta T circulator, and I plugged myself in, but I hope it's charging up. Do you set the Delta T on the circulator? Yes, you do. Again, it comes out of the box programmed to 20. But if you need to change it for a specific application, you can very easily adjust it using the LCD screen. Can it be used for domestic hot water? We do not have this circulator in a DHW setup at this point, and I'm not entirely sure that we will in the near future. Longer term, it's possible. And will it automatically change over to the chilled water mode? No, that has to be done manually, Jeff. You have to change it over manually. So good questions, guys. Good questions. All right. Well, let's look at Delta P now. Let's take a look at Delta P. And there's different types of Delta P. There's constant pressure and proportional pressure. And for what we use in North America, it's going to primarily be constant pressure. That's the best application for what we do here, meaning the circulator will vary its speed to maintain a specific pressure differential within the system. It kind of becomes the ultimate flat curve pump. We talked last week about flat curve pumps and zone valves. It's kind of the ultimate flat curve pump. And it'll change its speed based on feeling resistance against the impeller. All right, so let's say it's running in constant pressure mode, okay? And I got 3 zones open and 1 zone closes. All of a sudden, that impeller is kind of pushing against a little bit more resistance, okay? A little bit more resistance. That's a signal then that the circulator that interprets that as, well, hey, something's closed. That means I don't have to run as fast. So it's going to slow down based upon a programmed algorithm. Again, we talked a little bit about that last week. So it feels that resistance against the impeller. Frankly, we sell a lot more of these than we do the Delta T pumps, simply because they're less expensive and there are no sensors involved. A lot of people say, hey, don't give me sensors. I don't do sensors. I don't like sensors. Just don't make me put in a sensor. So, okay, no sensors, you use this. There's no sensors in this thing inside or out. It simply feels that resistance against the impeller, all right? And what you will have in the constant pressure mode or even the proportional pressure mode is a fixed performance curve. Even though, yes, it's variable speed, it's a fixed performance curve. And we discussed that last week. It's going to work on a fixed performance curve, even though it's jumping from pump curve to pump curve as it speeds up and slows down. It's going to be maintaining a constant pressure. So it's kind of like a performance curve, as we look at here. All right, this is the 0015 E3. We have 3 settings. We have a 5-foot ahead constant pressure setting, flat curve, a 10-foot ahead constant pressure setting, flat curve, or we're at full speed, fixed speed, okay? In the high mode, it's full speed, fixed speed, and it works on that performance curve. So our 7 gallon a minute at 5-foot ahead system, all right, it's going to work right there. And Glorioski, aren't we happy? Okay, 7 gallons a minute, 5-foot ahead under design conditions. I got a 20-degree Delta T. I'm just giddy. All right, I'm just giddy. My smallest zone was 1 gallon a minute at 4 feet ahead. Well, it can't work there, right? because it has to work on that 5 foot ahead constant pressure zone or constant pressure line. It has to work on that performance curve. So instead of working there, it's going to work there. So again, as zones open, and we talked last week about all the little different pump curves, as zones open, the circulator will go faster. As zones close, the circulator will go slower. Okay, the circulator will go slower. Now, if I selected medium speed, all right, if I selected medium speed, I'm going to have to work on this pump curve here. I'm going to have to work here. So with all zones calling, again, that system curve is going to go right back out here. With all zones calling, look at where I am in terms of flow, right? And where am I in terms of flow? I'm kind of where I was. All right, I'm at 9.5 gallons a minute. That's where I was with my fixed speed pump, right? I'm not doing myself any delta T favors there. My biggest difference is I'm at 44 watts instead of 80 or 85. All right. I'm getting close to that 2 gallons a minute here at medium speed too, at my medium setting. So yeah, even though it's going to be running at a lower wattage, maybe 30 watts up here, I'm bopping back and forth between 30 and 44 watts. The biggest advantage I've gained for myself is electrical savings. I have not set this thing up to have as much of an impact on that incredible shrinking delta T as I could have. That's why I said with these things, you really got to know what these things mean and how to use them. If I said to hell with it, I'm going to contractor, no callback mode, I'm up here, I'm at 44 watts all the way around, 2 gallons a minute, 9.5 gallons a minute. My incredible shrinking delta T has not been impacted at all. All I'm doing is I've cut my electrical consumption in almost half. That's all I've done with this pump. It's not a bad thing, but I've really missed the mark on what I can do with it, right? I haven't taken full advantage. I've sold my customer something and I'm giving them about half of what it could do. And nobody likes that, right? Nobody would knowingly do that or willingly do that to a customer. We're good people. We want to give our customer their money's worth, right? But in this case, you're not. It's coming out. You're giving them half of their money's worth, and nobody likes that. Now it gets even worse. It gets different here. Well, actually, it's the same thing happens at partial loads too. Again, 50% load. We're down here 3.5 gallons a minute, right? Okay. If I'm at even if I set this thing up the best I can to 5 foot ahead, even if it's set up properly, I'm still working here, man. It has to work there. System curves and pump curves. System curves and pump curves. It's still working on that 5 foot ahead constant pressure line. It's going to run the same speed in October as it does in January, as it does in April. So as it gets warmer out, my delta T is going to shrink. But in this case, instead of being around 5 or 6, it's going to be around 10. It's better. It's not ideal. It's not perfect, but it's better. It is better. And in this example, with this pump, it's the best we can do. We may have a little bit of an advantage with the VT2218. Now you have to make the decision, is it worth the extra cost? Is the difference in performance worth the extra cost? In some cases it is. In some cases it's so close it's really not a worthwhile decision to make.
So a question comes in, what if your design was 7 gallons a minute, 7 foot ahead? Let's go back to the 0015 that you had there, John.
Mm-hmm.
And the pump is set to low speed. So if you could sketch out the pump curve real quick at 7 right?
7 and 7 is right here.
You'll actually underflow a system if on those design days you get to there. So I would say this could underperform maybe 10, 15, 20% of the winter. Most of the winter will be fine because it's going to give you, say, 5.5 gallons a minute at 5 foot ahead. And that's going to work fine for most of the winter. As it starts to get colder outside, that's when all of a sudden I just don't have enough BTU sending out to the system itself. So it depends on how accurate your 7 and 7 is there, Bill.
Yeah, if we estimated it, I mean, if it's 7 gallons a minute and you measured the baseboard without any heat loss, and you kind of did that, multiply by 1.5, multiply by 0.04 head loss calculation, you're overestimating probably in both cases. Chances are, if you went to that 5 foot ahead line, you'll probably be okay. If you were a little off, just a little bit off, you'll probably still be okay. As long as you have the BTUs in the boiler, as long as you have the horsepower in the boiler, If you're reasonably close to that line, the worst thing that'll happen is as you get closer and closer to design conditions, your delta T might start to get a little bit wider. All right, it might go to 22, 23, 24, and that's not a horrible thing. Okay, and that's only for those short amounts of time. If you did the math, you know, to the nth degree, and 7 and 7 was it, you'll probably find, as what Dave said, you might reach points when it gets really, really cold out that it just can't keep up. Yeah. Good question. Does that make sense? Is that a good answer?
So if you end up setting it on medium, then you're going to run out to the full speed, as you can see, because you hit the full speed curve. So you're going to run the full 44 watts, full speed of the circulator itself, if there's no zone valves or anything like that on there. So that's what you've got operation wise. So if there were zone valves, well, that would be the whole house running. You've got full speed, great. As the zone valves close, you set it on the medium, then you'll actually slow down in speed and slide across that line.
Very good, very good. As Sean McGovern asks, is the 2218 an upgrade from the Bumblebee? Yeah, this is considered like Bumblebee 3.0. Okay, Bumblebee was a cool little pump when we first came out with it. It was our first Delta T pump, and it was great for that time, but it needed work, specifically in programming. It needed to be easier to program, and it needed a little bit more headroom. So the 2218 actually gives you a little bit more oomph on the high end, and it's much, much easier to program than the Bumblebee. If you ever tried to program a Bumblebee, you probably didn't want to do it twice.
Yeah, thank God it was already set up at a 20 degree out of the box.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly. Is it better to place a remote boiler temp sensor on the supply or the return for best efficiency, says Howard Leggett. A remote
I think
boiler.
that refers to a question 2 above. Take a look
okay.
At that. Yeah.
Okay. So did you, and
I did not answer. No.
VT2218 with a gravity-fed system and a Mod Con tankless boiler with a remote sensor. Oh boy, is it better to place the remote sensor on the supply or the return for the best efficiency? Are we using this in set point mode?
Are you talking about the VT sensors or the boiler sensor?
Yeah, there's a question. Yeah, let's clarify that, Howard, if you would, just so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so if you were using the VT2218 on a gravity feed system, I would still use the supply returns. I would use both sensors and use it on the supply return of the system, not necessarily on the boiler side. You want to do it on the system side. All right, if you're putting a tankless boiler in there, you're looking at, primary, secondary piping. You don't even go anywhere near the boiler on that side. You're doing it on the system supply, system return coming back is where you're going to put the VT sensors on there. Don't look at the boiler there. Let the boiler do its own thing at that point.
Very good, very good. And speaking of watts, do you know how much energy an old Armstrong uses? Good question there, Shane. I'm going to guess over 100 watts for one of those the old Armstrongs, like the B&G 100 and the Takeo 110. I'm guessing it's up there in terms of wattage. They weren't the most efficient of circulators, but boy, oh boy, they would never die.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was around 110 or so. Yeah, I think around 110 watts.
Yeah, that's where I'm thinking.
Where your 007 is 80, and now we get down into the 44 watt for the 15E3 and all the way down to 4. Yep, just thinking about it. Yeah, 202 from Bill. He knows. Okay.
There you go.
202. Wow.
Hokey smokes, Bullwinkle.
Well, it's half the speed, right? These were 1725 circulators.
That's right.
3400. Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Still the same horsepower motor as a 007. So the horsepower was the same. It was just half the speed, bigger impellers and whatnot. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks,
All righty,
Bill.
let's take a look at the. I'm sorry. Go ahead there, Robin.
I said thank you, Bill.
All right. There you go. Good job, boy wonder. Okay. Let's stop beating the Batman to death. Let's talk about the 0018E, because this is kind of the. My opinion, and you take that for what it's worth. It's kind of it is the most technologically advanced residential circulator on the market, and I don't think it's even close. If you take a look at what this thing can do and how it can do it, it makes babies happy, obviously, but it makes grown-ups happy too. It can do more for you and do it easily for you than any circulator on the market today. And let's take a gander at this thing. What it does is it makes use of Bluetooth technology, and that's what gives it its flexibility and its capabilities, okay, that go well beyond anything else out there on the market. It has 3 operating modes. If you don't want to use Bluetooth, you don't have to use Bluetooth. There's step 1 right there. You do not need to connect this to your phone via an app or Bluetooth if you don't want to. It has 3 operating modes. The first operating mode is for zone circulators, and it's an infinitely adjustable fixed speed pump. So I can go from a high up here of 44 watts, okay, 18 feet ahead out to 16 gallons a minute. I can just turn it all the way up if I want to. If I turn it about halfway, right around in here, I'm at 10 feet ahead out to 14 or 13 and a half gallons per minute. That's kind of almost like a 007, really. And if I really want to dial it down for small zones, I can, okay? All the way down to maybe smaller than a 003, okay? For those really, really small zones. I have the ability to set it. And it's like a volume dial. You turn it to the right, it goes faster. You turn it to the left, it goes slower. Then you also have a zone valve setting, all right? You go to this zone valve setting and you have 2 constant pressure lines. One at 15 foot ahead and one at 10 foot ahead. So you have 2 constant pressure settings. And if you use thermostatic radiator valves, and frankly, we don't, okay, we don't here. But if you did, we had the green all the way to the, not quite all the way to the left, but in the TRV setting, you have 2 proportional pressure modes, which are used exclusively for thermostatic radiator valve continuous circulation systems. So those are the basics. When you link it up with the app that you can download from the App Store, and connect it via Bluetooth using this mode, this connection right here, and it pairs very, very easily. Now you open up a whole world of possibilities. Okay, now you have 2-way communication. Now not only can you read what the pump is doing on your app down to the GPM, okay, to the 10th of a GPM. All right, not only can you read what the pump is doing, but you can also open up a lot more programming possibilities. Okay, so for constant pressure mode, instead of just 2 settings, you in fact have 9 different settings. And the way you go from one setting to another is you can either, hit those 2 arrow keys up or down, and it'll jump from here up to here or here down to here automatically, or you simply use your finger and you press the line you want, and that's where it'll go. So and you have 9 options. Okay, you have 9 options. So if you had that 7 at 7, you got a better chance of being right on there. Okay, if that's where you wanted to be. Okay, so you have a much better opportunity. We also have that, again, that infinitely adjustable fixed speed mode, where again, we can adjust that to anywhere. But what you'll see is there's a dot there that represents the actual current operating point. And then you have this slider that you just put your finger on, and you can slide it up or down to adjust the speed of the pump. Okay, and if you look down at the bottom, you'll see it's giving you the current flow and the current head, all right, and the current wattage based on where that dial is. So you have the ability to move that up and down with your finger and set it to the flow that you want. All right, we're going to show you how to use that. It's really cool. And then you have 2 other options that you probably won't use much. One is active adapt, and we're going to explain what that is because it's not what most people think it is. It's not the magic button you push and it figures everything out for you. Nice story, but wrong. And then we have just a proportional pressure, which is the same as, it operates the same as the constant pressure setting. You just press on which setting you might want. All right, but we'll talk about this in a little bit. What I want to show you is how to set up the constant pressure mode for a zone pump. All right, and before we told you when you're selecting a pump, you need to figure out the flow and the head, and then find a pump whose curve most closely fits that. With the 0018E, you only have to do half that work. You just have to find the flow. You got to get an idea of the load. So say this is a replacement circulator. You want to put in a replacement circulator for a zone pump. Well, the first thing you got to do is get an idea of a load. Now, whether that's doing a quick heat loss, measuring the baseboard and multiplying by your favorite number, and double check and cross-referencing that against the size of the pipe, all right? So let's say you measure the baseboard and it comes out to 25,000 BTUs worth of baseboard, okay? And then you look at the pipe size, and the pipe size is 3/4 inch. Well, you know the most I'm going to get out of that is 4 gallons a minute, right? 40,000 BTUs, 4 gallons a minute. I got 25,000 BTUs worth of heat installed. I'm going to go with 2.5 gallons a minute. GPM equals BTUH 25,000 divided by delta T times 500, right? 25,000 divided by 10,000, 2.5 GPM. So you get an idea of the load as best you can, all right? And then you convert that load to flow rate. And once you know the flow rate, you're done. Now all you have to do is move this slider back and forth until you reach your 2.5 gallons a minute, okay? And you'll see this dot will move down. This dot will move down to, let's say, 2.5 gallons a minute, all right? If it, to 2.5 gallons a minute, and whatever the head is, first off, you can verify right there. It'll give you that in real time. And let's say it's really 2.5 gallons a minute at 4 feet ahead. Well, what's going to happen is this thing's going to go down, down, down to right here. Now you're at 2.5 gallons a minute at 4 feet ahead. That's what it'll say. It'll read the current wattage, and by golly, you've programmed that circulator about as well as a fixed speed circulator can be programmed. You have the ability to move the performance curve to match the requirement. Now, it's not going to change its speed now and used as a zone pump, but you're not going to find a pump that's going to get you any closer to where you need to be than this. All right. So we again, that incredible shrinking delta T is going to shrink as it gets warmer out. We can't change that, but at least we're starting at 20 under design conditions. We're starting at a good spot. Okay. So that's how you would set that up as a zone pump. Really easy. And once you get the knack of how that slider works, you can make that happen. When using this as a zone valve pump replacement, it's just as easy, if not a little, with just one extra step. All right. You still need to get an idea of the overall load. So the total load of the house, okay, pipe size and baseboard or whatever radiation you have is going to help you find that. Get a total idea of the total load, convert that to GPM. All right. Then what you're going to do here is you're going to go back to the fixed speed mode. All right. And I got a message from Dave. He just lost power at his house. Oh, great. So we're going to fly solo here for the rest until he gets his power back. So we're going to go to that. We're going to switch back to the constant speed mode. So let's say we have 8 gallons a minute. All right. So I'm going to adjust this slider until this dot gets to 8 gallons a minute at whatever the head is. All I have to do is get it to 8 gallons a minute. It's going to tell me the head. All right. It's going to tell me the head. So let's say it comes out to 8 GPM at 7 feet ahead. And again, you have to have all zones open and calling at this point, right? So we just move that dial until we get the flow that we need. The app's going to tell you what the head loss is. So it's 7 feet ahead. Then you go back here to constant pressure and you select the mode for 7 foot ahead. All right, simply by pressing it with your finger. And now you've programmed that circulator. Again, about as well as it can be programmed. So instead of figuring out flow and head, now all you need to do is figure out flow. All right, get the best idea of flow that you can and take it from there. All righty, well, that active adapt portion, and Dave, still isn't back, and that's unfortunate because Dave has the display unit there, and he's going to show it with his app. But we may have to wind up doing that next week, gang, because Dave's not here, man. Let's talk about active adapt. And active adapt, auto adapt. Again, we talked about this last week. That there's so many of the myths. People think these things are magic. You press the magic button and it figures everything out for you, which is just insane. It doesn't work that way. And I found this quote from Marjane Satrapi today. The world is not about Batman and Robin fighting the Joker. Things are more complicated than that. And nothing is scarier than people who try to find easy answers to complicated questions. And to me, that's that whole active adapt, auto adapt story. It sounded great. Oh God, auto adapt. That means it automatically figures everything out for you. Press the button and we're good. Hey, it was just totally false. It's not even remotely close to how that thing works. So what I want to do is go over how it works for you so you understand it and you can make good decisions, okay? The typical European style heating system, all right? And let me ask you guys, no, I still have power because I have lights on. Are you guys with us? Let me ask you that. Are you guys, are there folks still out there with us? Good, okay. Great. Yeah, we lost Dave. We lost Todd. We lost a whole bunch of people. Okay, the
I'm
whole
kind of
block just
back.
went there. Oh, Dave's back, man.
I'm on my phone. I can do it
You're
on the
your
phone right now. I can't
Excellent.
see
All right.
anything else. I got no questions. I can't see. I have no idea what anybody's doing right now. If they're typing in questions, I can't see anything, but I can join you guys at the moment so I can listen in.
All right, cool. Very good, very good. And Todd's with us too. Todd Facey, our national Global Vice President of Sales. I think Todd, that's a great title, and that's Todd. He's our boss. I think he's with us as well. But let's talk about your typical European style heating system. All right, with a typical European style heating system, you have a ModCon boiler and panel radiators that are piped up in a two-pipe system. You know, a supply and return, right? A direct supply and return home run to each radiator. Okay, with thermostatic radiator valves that are they're not open and closed. They modulate. They're opening or closing pretty much most of the time. You have one pump, and that pump runs 24/7 for 6,000 hours, meaning it turns on in the beginning of September and it shuts off the end of May in your typical European heating system. That's 6,000 hours. If you're running a pump for 6,000 hours, it's probably a good idea to have an efficient one, wouldn't you say? So that pump runs, and the thermostatic radiator valves will modulate. They modulate over the course of the heating season, all right? So what happens if the pump is too big or if the pump is too small? Well, if the pump is too big, we're over pumping, right? So the TRVs actually spend most of their time mostly closed, all right? They're mostly closed, and then when then all of a sudden, you know, they have to open up more because it's a bimetal thing in there, and it expands and contracts based on room temperature. So if they're mostly closed and all of a sudden they're going to have to open up and then they got to close up again real quick, you wind up with relatively inconsistent heat delivery and inconsistent comfort. If the pump's too small, you kind of got the same thing, only different. Those TRVs are going to be mostly open until the point where they overheat, then they got to shut, and then they got to open up again because the pump's too small when it gets really cold out. So that's also going to give you poor heat delivery and poor comfort. So what active adapt, which Takeo has had for years, what active adapt and its cousin auto adapt do is they address and assess changing pressure differentials within the system. So they're assessing changing pressure differentials as those TRVs modulate, and then what it tries to do is it determines the best proportional delta P curve at that time, and if things change, it'll try to adjust. What it's trying to do is to keep the systems away from extremes, meaning TRVs either mostly open or mostly closed. It's trying to keep the system away from that and try to keep them in a relatively consistent pattern so they don't bop back and forth a lot. Consider it like a football field. We're trying to stay within the hash marks. Okay, so let's take a look at this. If this black line represents ideal heat conditions, okay, over here on the left-hand side, we have TRVs mostly closed, okay, with a bigger than necessary pump. And over here we have TRVs mostly open with a smaller than necessary pump. So what we might find is if this is where we want to be with the TRVs mostly closed, we're going to spend a lot of time going with the TRVs doing this, going back and forth, and they might come back in here, and then they're going to go back and forth like so. Ditto on the other side. The TRVs are going to modulate back and forth over here. Then we might migrate back here for a little bit and then back out here. And we're spending more time out here than we are in here, closer to our ideal consistent comfort level. Now, we may go from, 10 degrees warmer than we want it to be to 10 degrees colder than we want it to be, but hey, you average it out, you're fine, right? It doesn't work that way. So that's kind of where we're at in a normal system without active adapt. What active adapt does is it basically makes us play within the hash marks, if we're going to use a football field analogy. So opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing. We stay within a relatively consistent heat delivery pattern, while at the same time minimizing the electrical consumption of the circulator. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means the first time that pump comes on, okay, it's going to come on to its default, and this heavy purple line is the default performance line, okay, and it's going to run on that default line for 90 minutes, an hour and a half. If you turn it off, it's got to start over again, okay? So it's got to run for 90 minutes to analyze the system, and then another 30 minutes for that system to stabilize. Once it's stabilized, then the mathematical algorithms are going to kick in, all right? So what makes it adapt? So say we're working on this default performance curve, all right? And we have a system curve here and a system curve here for wide open and mostly closed. And what's happening is, as these TRVs modulate, we're going to bop back and forth between those two yellow dots, okay? We're going to bop back and forth. As TRVs start to open, the pump will go faster. As TRVs start to close, the pump will go slower. What the pump needs to see is it needs to see a 1.3 gallons per minute flow change, either up or down, for at least 20 minutes. If the load is stable, it needs to be 60 minutes, okay? It needs to see that much of a flow change for at least 60 minutes for it to do the following. If we're working up here and it sees a 1.3 gallon per minute flow change on the high side, then what it's going to do is it's going to jump up to the next line. If it's a 1.3 GPM flow change to the low side, it's going to jump down to the line below it, okay, in order to adapt. That's the adapting part of active adapt, okay? So it's going to bop back and forth here indefinitely, but if it sees a 1.3 GPM increase for about 20 minutes or 60 minutes if the load is stable, then bam, it's going to jump up to the next highest up proportional curve and work where the system curve intersects the pump curve. All right. And then if it stays up there for a while, it'll bop back and forth. It'll bop back and forth until it sees a decrease, and then it'll bop back down. Okay. Now, how does it feel? As we said before, it interprets resistance against the impeller. Okay. As TRVs open, the load is increasing, so that impeller starts to freewheel a little bit. That's a signal for the circulator to go faster. As TRVs close, it's more resistance against the impeller. That's a signal for the circulator to slow down. Okay, and again, this is constantly going on. In steady state operation, all right, excuse me, in steady state operation, what we'll generally see is this, all right, bopping back and forth between two of these pump performance curves, all right, and that's basically that. Okay, pretty much. It's basically that. It doesn't analyze the system and figure out exactly what you need. It doesn't, like in a zone valve system. If we use this in a zone valve system, here's what would happen. Okay, so let's say I needed that 7 at 7, right? 7 gallons a minute, 7 feet ahead. Well, I turn that sucker on. It's going to the default line right here, and it's going to operate right there. Okay, and that's going to be at about, looks to be about 10 foot ahead at about 9 gallons a minute. So we're over pumping. We're over pumping. All right, my smallest zone, let's take a look at the smallest zone. My smallest zone, or my highest head zone, let's call it my highest head single zone, is 3 gallons a minute at 7 feet ahead. So it's right here. That's my single biggest zone. Well, it's not going to work there. It's going to work where the system curve intersects the pump curve, which is right there. Now, again, zones are going to close, zones are going to open, but they're going to open and close along that line, okay, along that line. It has to. My smallest zone, 2 gallons a minute at 2 feet ahead, well, gang, it ain't going to work there. You know where it's going to work? Way the heck up here, okay? way the heck up there. So a 2 gallon a minute at 2 foot ahead zone in this example is going to go faster than a 3 gallon a minute 7 foot ahead zone. I'm going to get more flow and more head through that one zone. Now, the question I have for you guys, is this going to work? Meaning, are people going to get heat? Well, hell yes, of course they're going to get heat. It's going to work. No one's going to call you up and yell at you because they're cold. All right. But it's not doing what you think it's doing. I guess that's the question. That's the point. It's not doing, we haven't done a thing to help our incredible shrinking delta T. Not one blessed thing. All right. Maybe we're using a little less than 44 watts for most of the time, but we've really done, we've got this great pump and we're not using it anywhere close to its maximum capabilities. All right. In a zone pump system, let's say at 3 gallons a minute at 7 feet ahead, that's where I want it to be, but it's going to work there. Right? And because in both cases, guys, in both cases, because we turn the pump off and then turn it back on again, okay, it's not running continuously. We turn it off, we turn it back on again. It's going to go back to the default mode every single time. Okay, so it's never adapting to anything. It's going to work on that curve forever. Not a bad thing. 3 gallons a minute, 7 feet ahead. I'm really going to have maybe 4 gallons a minute at 9 feet ahead. Perfect? No. Will it work? Yeah, of course it'll work. Of course it'll work. But it's not doing what we think it's doing. And I guess that's the point. I want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay? And it's never going to adapt. In either case, it's never going to quote unquote adapt because there's nothing for it to adapt to. And because we shut it off, it starts all over again when it comes back on. Let me know if that makes sense to you folks. All right. If that works. All right. I know we lost Dave quite a while ago, but Dave, you're back on the phone, right?
I am back. Actually, I'm back online right now. If you
Oh, you are?
I am. I don't have power in the house, but I'm using my phone as a hotspot and I got the laptop up and running. So I'm not going to be able to do our demo tonight. I don't have a generator here in the house, not yet anyway.
There you go.
I am back on. I am watching. I am here. I'm monitoring the questions and everything still.
Oh, excellent. Good to have you back. I was worried about you there, boy wonder.
It was wacky, man. It just all of a sudden just went blank in the house. So and kudos to my wife to bring a lantern upstairs for me sitting here in the office because she knew I was sitting in a dark room. Like what the hell? What the hell just happened here? And I'm looking out the window and there's nothing up and down the block. So I have a feeling a tree hit the telephone pole somewhere.
Oh boy. Well, hey, it happens.
Holy down lines, Batman.
Yeah, holy down lines, Batman. All righty. Hey, let's give you the trivia answer and then we'll work on last week's trivia question and give our stuff away, all right? So that trivia answer, a lot of you guys got it, was what iconic role did Adam West turn down? James Bond. He was offered the role of James Bond after George Lazenby resigned the role after his on Her Majesty's Secret Service. All right, that was the one movie he did. They wanted West to portray Bond in what became Diamonds Are Forever, but West turned it down because he felt Bond should be played by a British actor. So they brought back Sean Connery for that one last hurrah, and then went to Roger Moore. But could you imagine Batman as Bond? It would be interesting.
That would be
he was
interesting.
certainly, just looking at these pictures, he was certainly suave enough. No, definitely suave and debonair, so to speak. So anyway, there's that. Dave, are you ready for last week's trivia answer prize giving away thing?
I am, and we had quite a few answers from last week too. So I am all set up with that. Had it set up in the background, so thank God that's still up and running.
Okay,
so
good.
Otherwise, we would have to do.
I don't have you as I have you as an organizer. There you go. So that should be you now.
Correct, sir. All right, I have it, and let's see here. Doom.
Okay, I'm not seeing you. I don't think.
Should have. Well, I think you have probably a challenge
there you
to
go.
see it.
I see. There you go.
Take a little bit of time because it's going through the phone. So, all right. So this is everybody. So last week we had the trivia question was there was a commonality between 3 different movies. We had Princess Bride as our theme last week, but between Forrest Gump and House of Cards, what was the commonality behind all 3 of those movies? And a lot of people got it because we kind of gave you the answer right there in the middle, and it was with the pictures of it, and it was the actress Robin Wright. So she was our trivia question last week. So this is everybody that got it right last week. So let's hit that wheel and let's see who is our winner this week.
Round and round she goes.
I lost my. Who was it? I lost the screen.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing it. It's kind of sort of spinning.
Justin Burns. Okay, I got it.
Justin Burns. Congratulations, Justin.
Excellent, Justin. I got your information somewhere down here. So, but if you can type it on in there, send it on over to me, and I will send you out the packet and all of other stuff, as well as a T-shirt if you can. So give me your shirt size too. I know I got it written down somewhere, but just so I have it again, let me know. Thanks, Justin. Good job. Congratulations.
Very good. Very good. Hang on one second.
I'll turn it back to you. There you go. You got it. You got the con.
All righty. I have the con.
I think there you
show
go.
my screen. There we go. I'm the new presenter. And let's go back here. All right. So that's it for this week. So it's time for questions. If you guys have questions, what do we have up for next week? Well, for next week, we have buffer tanks and mod cons, and we're going to see if we can get Dave and I into our Batman and Robin suits and see if we can do the Batman dance. What do you think, Dave? Should we do that?
I don't think anybody wants to see me dance. My wife even told me to stop dancing at one point.
Well, let's take a vote here. You guys, do you guys want to see Dave do the Batman dance? Type in your answers, because I think that would be an awesome thing. Rich McGrath's already looking out for you. He says, please don't. Mike Lampkin says, yeah, baby. Jim DePalma says, hell yes. Bill is all business. Bill's not doing he's not having any of this. He's all business. Does Takeo have a Delta T pump larger than the VT2218? No, unfortunately, we do not. Not at this time, Bill. Hey, you never know what the future's going to bring, but not at this time. Not at this time.
I mean, we do offer a bigger ECM. We do have the 0034E, which is 34 foot ahead out to 50 gallons a minute. So, and we have that in 2 versions. We have the standard 0034E, which is a 3 setting circulator, and then we have the 34E plus, which then has a digital display and more communication to BMS systems out there. But it does not have Delta T on there. Correct.
All right. So you never know. You never say never about the future. But yeah, you know what? But not at this time. Not at this time, unfortunately. All right. I asked I asked Todd if he wanted to come on and say hello to everybody, but he said, I haven't shaved and I'm still in Trump depression. So the boss is feeling a little bashful. So, but if you guys have any questions for Todd, type them in. I'll pass them along, and he'll text them to me, and we'll do that. But open it up now, guys, for just general questions. What questions do you have about tonight's material? What questions you have about hydronics in general? You want to talk about domestic hot water recirculation? We can sure as heck talk about that as well. I mean, you got Dave and me for as long as you guys want us. So have at it, guys. What's on your mind tonight? How's everybody doing? I don't know. I do want to share this though. This is my last hurrah for the week. Dave's taken over the con as trainer tomorrow for some stuff we have to do, because yours truly has knee surgery at 7:45 a.m. baby. It's a little meniscus thing. It shouldn't take too long, but I'm gonna be all doped up tomorrow and be spending my day taking a trip and not leaving the living room, so to speak. So that's my day tomorrow. So Dave, you're in charge till I get back.
All right, excellent. I become Batman. You're Robin tomorrow.
Say what?
Can I call you Robin tomorrow now? I'm
You can
Batman
call
now.
me Robin tomorrow, just not Robin Wright. Robin Boy Wonder is okay. But yeah, thank you,
Excellent,
Doug.
excellent.
It's
I will.
yeah, it's just a torn meniscus thing. They said it should be within a couple weeks. I'll be fine. I'm hoping they can put in that if I can
Should be
get
all
back
good.
the vertical I had when I was like 19, and just in animal shape and some of that other stuff, so I could hit the golf ball farther. But the doctor said, he really can't do those kinds of miracles. All right, here's a good question from Martin.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and next week, I just got a note from my wife, and the estimate for the power to come back on is going to be around 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm not going to be able to show you the communication with the 0018E, how to program it, and all that jazz. So maybe we can carve out some time next week for that.
Let's
so we'll
definitely
see
do
how.
that, yeah.
Maybe we can start off. We'll start the class off next week, going over the display, so you kind of remember what we did, and then we'll get into the buffer tanks and sizing from there, from what John's got. So that's what we'll do.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Here, quick question is the recommendation for pressure, flow, and temperature gauge size and the placement within the system for temperature and pressure gauge is generally in the boiler. So the tridicator valve or tridicator gauge is usually in the boiler itself. If you were putting one in, if you're putting a pressure gauge externally, I know Rick loves to put that pressure gauge right at the point of no pressure change, where the expansion tank connects to the system, along with the pressure reducing valve. I think that makes a ton of sense. That's a great place to put your pressure gauge. Absolutely. Temperature gauges, again, I think on the supply, going out to the system where the water's the hottest, that point where it's going out to the system is a good place to put a temperature gauge. Although you'll have one at the boiler itself. If you trust that one at the boiler, then another temperature gauge could go in the return, so you could see the difference in temperature there. Of course, the Delta T pump with its sensors, you won't have to put in any pressure temperature gauges. You'll have that on your that'll show up on the readout of the circulator itself on the LCD screen. Let me know if those answer your questions, Martin. Those are good questions.
And some of your boilers now, some of your wall hung condensing boilers, some with the electronic screens, and you get a lot more information, can tell you that info too, as long as the sensor's working properly. But 99% of the time, most of us only care about the supply temp. We never pay attention to the return temp. And if anything, today we talked about, why to pay attention to the return temperature to add that efficiency to your systems. So because, you stop and think about it, we've never cared. We've never cared what came back. We just said, you ever put in a system, you turned it on, you made sure it banged up to 180 degrees, it shut off, and then you made sure it turned back on again all by itself, and you said, okay, I'm done, I leave. And we never looked at return temperature. So I hope looking at the Delta T circulator today can say, hey, you know what? Return temp does have a lot more to do and giving me the efficiency in my systems and also the comfort. That's the one thing we never really talk about in the instructions of these circulators is what kind of comfort can you get in a house when you have a Delta T circulator is amazing. So I tell this story in a couple of different aspects, and I pulled out an old boiler in my in-laws' house and put in the new boiler, modulating boiler that had a cast iron there, put the modulating boiler in. I put Delta T circulators in too. One Delta T circulator. It was a single zone house here. And I remember the first cold snap that happened. And I happened to be away. I think I was down in Baltimore at the time. And I knew my wife was coming over to the house, and I called the house to talk to my wife. My mother-in-law answers the phone, and I said, oh, by the way, how's the heat? And she says to me, oh, yeah, I've been wanting to ask you about that. I don't think it works. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You don't think it's working? And I'm freaking out because it's the first cold snap. It's probably in the 30s that we experienced on Long Island. And in those 5 seconds, you start thinking, all right, who do I call? Who can come to the house, take a look at it? You know, I know my reps, Wales Derby, they're right around the corner. I could call somebody from over there, I can give Anthony a call, whatever, and hey, take a look and see what's going on. And I said, wait a minute, Mom, what do you mean by it not working? And she says, well, I said, what's the temperature in the house? And she says, well, it's 69 degrees. And I said, well, what's the thermostat set for? And she said, 69. And if you sit there and do the math, that's working. And I said, what do you mean it's not working? And she said, I don't hear it anymore, because she was used to the circulator banging on and off and the boiler short cycling. Now I put in a quiet boiler and an even quieter circulator. It was kind of like the system just went away. You didn't hear it running anymore. It wasn't banging out high temperatures. The Delta T was great across the whole system, and it just quieted right down. So that, and also just made it even temperatures in the space. And that's what I have found with Delta T circulators, and it just evens the temperatures out in the space itself. Whether it's a fin tube baseboard or even a radiant floor system, really drops it down big time. So pretty neat stuff to consider in there.
Very good, very good. We had a question a little earlier today about running a 007 continuously in a domestic hot water recirculation system, meaning, can I do it? Well, yeah, nothing says you can't. You certainly can. Couple of things to consider though if you do that. First off, how much bigger is that pump than you really need it to be? Because one of the things that's kryptonite for any kind of pipe, whether it's copper, PEX, CPVC, you name it, one of the things that's kryptonite for any kind of pipe is continuously circulating hot chlorinated water. All right, the PEX guys will tell you that's verboten. That's gonna kill that stuff. And copper, hey, pinhole leaks galore in a relatively short period of time. One of the things that we see virtually everywhere is simply oversizing of domestic hot water recirculation pumps, because for the same reasons heating pumps are oversized, is that there's just not a lot of choices. So if you were to run that continuously operating 24/7 with chlorinated hot water, all right, boy oh boy, you're going to have a problem. All right, you're going to have a problem over time. So it's the simplest thing, and from a customer standpoint, they don't care. They any time of the day or night they turn on the faucet, they get hot water. So from their standpoint, they love it. They don't care. You know, obviously they're not really noticing that, you know, you run a pump 24/7, 365, you know, an 80-watt pump for that amount of time. Yeah, you're going to chew up some electricity, absolutely chew up some electricity. In addition, you're also going to be forcing the water heater to work, because you're constantly flowing things through the water heater. You're constantly forcing that water heater to work more than it has to. Okay, it's constantly going to be working more than it has to. So you're going to be using more energy there. So you have wearing out the pipes, using way more electricity than you may need to, using way more gas or electricity at the water heater than you may need to. Other than that, there's no problem, right? But those are three things you might want to think about.
Yeah. And 99% of most recirc projects are over pumping.
Yeah.
Over pumping. We're looking at 1.6. If you had half-inch line, 1.1 to 1.6 gallons a minute max. And that's a velocity issue that we have to deal with. We don't want to run higher gallons per minute than that, because then we end up with this high velocity and we get corrosion of the pipe on the inside. So we want to make sure we run that thing even slower. And if you were looking at a 007, one, make sure it's going to be a stainless steel or a bronze circulator. You don't want to run a cast iron in a DHW project too. And I would say most 007s are going to be found as a cast iron circulator. So you want to make sure you run bronze or stainless.
You do have the stainless steel version that with flanges, which is very commonly used. But there are a lot of different ways you can deal with that situation. This one way is to put an aquastat, a strap-on aquastat on the pump, and use that as like a high-low limit. So that'll just, you know, it'll turn the pump on when the water temperature gets the water temperature that the aquastat is sensing hits 95 degrees, and it'll turn it off when it hits 105. Now, the best place for the aquastat is way out in the middle of the house after that last fixture on the recirc line. But it's the least convenient. So usually people just connect it right to the pump, and it's on the inlet side of the pump, which, okay, it's going to run a little bit more than it needs to, but it's okay. All right. A step up from there is a timer pump. So you set it up just to run certain times of the day when you want it to run and not. Put the timer and the aquastat together, and it's a step above that. But maybe the best way to run that is going to be also the simplest, and that's with the Taco smart plug. It's hang on, Dave. You talk for a couple seconds about the smart plug. I'll be right back. I got to go get mine. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. So the smart plug. So what's better than a timer and an aquastat? It's kind of like combining the two of them in between. And if I were to ask everybody out there, what is the most popular thermostat on the minds of people today? What do homeowners love about a thermostat today? That brand. All right. And I know thinking of it, and half of you are grumbling about it because it's such a pain in the neck to install, and you got to change controls. Sometimes you don't have enough power. But yes, everybody loves a Wi-Fi style thermostat. All right. And immediately everybody says, why? Why do you like it? And they pick it up and they say, because you can program it on this thing. No, that is not the actual real reason. This, they say, is programmed remotely, or they look at it remotely, maybe a lot the first 3 to 6 months. After that, maybe once a year do they log in. The biggest thing that people love about a Nest thermostat or any of these Wi-Fi, especially Nest anyway, because Nest has a motion sensor built in, and it programs your programmable thermostat. That's why people love it. How many times have you guys gone out to a homeowner's house and gone to program their programmable thermostats, right? We do it all the time. The batteries died, now you got to reprogram it again. Homeowners hate that part. So that's what is great about the Nest thermostat, is that it programs itself. Now the smart plug, what that does is basically learns when you use hot water in a house. It has a temperature sensor that it straps onto the hot water supply that feeds the house, and it looks for events. And an event is a temperature rise, a duration at that temperature, and then a temp fall. And it says, hey, you know what? At this time on this day, somebody used hot water. I'm going to record it to make sure I run next week at the exact same time, same bat channel. I had to work that one in there. I had to work that in there. And it's going to run and make sure you don't have to wait for hot water right there. Okay. So, and it's got a 7-day calendar in there, and as many events a day is what it's going to do. But it does give you windows of opportunity in order to get in there too. So that's what's great about this smart plug, is to really make it a simple system out there. The worst thing, well, not the worst thing, you can plug in a pump, make it run 24 hours, 7 days a week, call it a day. Put an aquastat on it, but that's fine. But most people have schedules. But then, you put it on a timer, and if anybody had a timer on their recirc system in their house up until March, the timer worked great. After March, and everybody got stuck at home, it was just like, oh, well, I don't have to take a shower at 6:30 anymore. I could do whenever I want to. They had to wait for the hot water. So They went ahead and, flicked the timer to make it to run 24 hours, 7 days a week. Well, the smart plug would actually relearn itself and say, oh, there's new events going on. Or you hit the button on the bottom of it and say, you know what, run 5 minutes on, 10 off all day long, instead of 24 hours, 7 days a week. So that's the beauty of it. I love this thing. I love this side of the business that we're going into with the recirc side, and really paying attention to what you need in systems itself. So that's good stuff.
Absolutely. What you have here with the smart plug, again, this works with anybody's pump, by the way, too. Anybody's pump with a line cord. It doesn't have to be a Taco. It'll work with anybody's. What you do is
we send voltage spikes if it's not a green one, though, up the line.
No, we don't. You plug this into the wall, then you plug the pump into this. You connect the strap-on sensor to the supply pipe going out, leaving out the mechanical room, and let it take over. The first week, it's going to be in a pulse mode, 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 24/7, while it learns your patterns. Then after that first week, it's simply going to replicate your patterns. So as Dave said, Monday morning, 6 a.m., you get up, take a shower. What this thing's going to do is it's going to be off. And then at 5 a.m., it's going to start that pulsing mode, 5 on, 10 off, 5 on, 10 off, 5 on, 10 off for a 2-hour time frame from 5 to 7. That 2-hour time frame gives you a little leeway if you get up earlier or later, number one. But number two, as Dave said, it's got a built-in 1-hour window on either side. So on that day, that you change that first week, basically after daylight savings or go back to standard time, you're covered in either direction. So you're not sitting around waiting. So it has those things built in, and then it relearns. It's constantly relearning. So very, very cool, very simple little thing. And if you're not cool with that and you want that 24/7 thing, then as Dave said, just hit the button over here, put it into pulse mode, and it'll pulse 5 on, 10 off, 24/7, 365, which is 20 minutes an hour as opposed to 60 minutes an hour. And that would be less, okay? That would be less operating time. So another option there for you. So cool. Where do we get the shirts? I got mine on Amazon. You go to Amazon and type in anything T-shirt, and you'll find anything. I mean, I've also seen some come up that were wildly inappropriate that I would never use and never buy, but they are there because I am.
This one I've had for a bunch of years. Actually, the kids gave me this quite a few years ago. So, when my kids were young, around 6 and 4, and I think I said something to them one day. I said, "I'm Batman." They're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yes, I am. Have you ever seen me and Batman in the same room separately?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "See, I'm Batman."
When my kids were little, I had a black leather jacket, and they were starting to watch Happy Days on Nick at Night, and I told them that the character of Fonzie was actually modeled after me. And because I had this leather jacket, and they were going, "Really, Dad? That's so cool." I go, "Hey." And they learned quickly that that was not the case, because they wanted to know where my motorcycle was, and I said, "Well, I don't have one. If you were the Fonz, you'd still have your motorcycle." Well, I don't.
So I had a comment come in from Manson before, and so he was jumping back to the Delta T Circulator or VT Circ, and he says, so a Delta T Circulator will run more over the season. So does that mean the thermostat will be cycling less? And yeah, it will be. So it's not going to be a huge amount, because it's only going to deliver the BTUs that you need. So instead of doing fast and furious out to the system, it's going to do a slow and gentle heat into the space. So if we do a heat loss like we've done, and we show you 4,700 BTUs per hour is the heat loss, let's not deliver those BTUs in 10 minutes. How about we stretch it out longer, because we lose it just a little bit at a time. Let's just replace it a little bit at a time. And that's kind of what Delta T does. It's kind of like indoor reset. It's not exactly, but it sees how many BTUs will leave in the house, and that's how many it wants to put back in again. So yes, you will get a little bit of a less cycle count out of your system over time. Yeah, that starts to add up. But it just really makes it a lot more comfortable. And then to follow up on that, he said, so that's going to make a non-condensing boiler more efficient. And I'm like, heck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Power's on.
Hey, look at you.
Look at that.
Yeah, the power's back. Excellent. Good. All right.
So yeah, so that your cast iron boiler starts to add efficiency, and you stop and think about that for a second. What do we mean by that? All right. Well, when's a cast iron boiler most efficient?
When it's off.
When it's off, uses no fuel. But if it banged up to 180 degrees and shut off, and you had a fixed speed circulator that's going to pump out as much as it can at, say, 6 gallons a minute, the boiler cools off quickly. But if you only needed 1 gallon a minute, you basically sip those BTUs out of the system. And it takes a really long time for that boiler to cool down before it bangs off and fires again. So that's when the boiler becomes most efficient, is when it gets a nice long run time. Get it cold and then get it to run really long again. So exactly that, exactly right with that delta T circulator.
Yep.
Thanks, Manson.
Fewer cycles, fewer and longer cycles, fewer cycles and longer ones is really the key here. And I guess it's an oversimplification to say stop and go city driving versus highway driving, but that's an easy to understand analogy, not a perfect one. But yeah, what would you rather have? A lot of short cycles or very few long ones? And runtime might wind up being almost exactly the same. It's just I'd rather have, 2 10-minute cycles than 10 2-minute cycles. Is that right? What else you got for questions there, boys and girls, folks out there in webinar land? So what I see are consumers buying condensing boilers, but no increase in radiation, so they lose efficiency. No increase in radiation, so they lose efficiency.
I understand what he's talking about because they're still running it at 180 degrees.
Gotcha.
Right. And so here's what you want to do, Manson. You run into a condensing boiler, wall hung boiler, and you're hooking it up to a high temp system like baseboard or fan coils. You are going to have to do a heat loss.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want you to do a heat loss. You did the heat loss to maybe figure out the boiler size. Sometimes the boilers are just not small enough anyway. But the reason for doing the heat loss, the second part you should do is measure up the radiation that's installed. And you'll probably see that the house is way over radiated, which means you go back to those baseboard charts. And I think we did it in episode 2, right, John?
Episode 2. Yep, in episode 2.
Episode 2. Take a look there. You'll see the baseboard charts of what the BTU output is per linear footage. And you can figure out what water temperature maximum you would need based upon the oversize of baseboard compared to the heat loss. And you'd be surprised that you might only have to run 150 degrees as a maximum.
Right.
And bring it down below, say, 140 degrees, get it down to, say, 130, 125 or so. You get down to there, the boiler starts to condense. So it is a second step that you're going to need to do, but this way, and if you do that, make sure the homeowners know that you're running a less warm water out to the system, that it takes longer for it to go up and down. Like if they do with deep setbacks and thermostats, it's not going to respond the same. Just make sure they know that. Yes.
There you go. It's Grayson, Dave, with a Y. You just have Grason. It's Grayson.
The keyboard, that Y has been sticking a little bit. So thank you.
You got
Carl.
a sticky Y.
It is.
The boy wonder has a sticky Y.
Holy keyboard, Batman.
Holy keyboard, Batman. Oh, gosh. I got to tell you, I was telling Dave this beforehand. When I was in kindergarten in 1965, 1966, when I was in kindergarten, that's when Batman first came on. And my best friend, Bruce Skilling, and I, every day during play period at kindergarten, we were the morning group. Every day, we would build Batmobiles out of blocks they had these big blocks that we could make stuff out of. So every day we would make a Batmobile and we'd play Batman and Robin, and I was Batman and he was Robin. And to this day, 55 years later, when Bruce and I hang out and run into each other, it's, hey, Batman, hey, Robin, and that's just it stuck with us for all these years. Now, Bruce had a twin brother, still has a twin brother named Chris. And Chris was smarter than both of us put together, because when we played Batman and Robin, all right, Chris's job was to be Catwoman's helper. And Catwoman was Hillary Brawley, who was the hottest chick in kindergarten going back then. So Chris was just smarter than both of us put together, which, you take a box of rocks, it's probably smarter than Bruce and I put together, but that's just the way it goes. So that's my Batman story. And that's why I've always got a soft spot in my heart for Batman. And why, to this day, another friend of mine, Marty Putri, who we were friends with in kindergarten, for his 6th birthday, I'll never forget this because I still haven't forgiven him for it. He got a flying Batman helicopter. And I always wanted one. And to this day, he always reminds me that he got one and I didn't. The stinker. All right, enough of my own personal angst. Let's get back to business. My Batman-related angst. Let's see, what do we have here? Most condensing boilers in my territory are run without reset because the homeowner is used to a cast iron boiler going up to high temperature all the time. Does not feel the same, so they turn off the outdoor reset, says the French knight, Jimmy De Palma.
And
Yeah, that still just boggles the mind that people will spend mega dollars on this high efficiency boiler and then kneecap the sucker before it gets out of the gate by making it do less than half of what it could do. At what point does that make sense to anybody?
And unfortunately, I don't think it's a lot of the homeowners that are doing that too. It's the contractor. It's the same mentality when you put a 3-speed pump. What speed do you put it on? Put it on high, right? I don't want the one phone call or the one trip back to the house. I'm losing money, right? And I understand that. I understand that conversation. You don't want to have to go back to a customer's house to explain to them, oh, it's working normal. But have the conversation beforehand. And that's so when you give them that brochure of that boiler you're putting in there and it says 97% efficiency, explain to them how you get there. Because there's a ... It depends as you go through there. So and I see that. I see a lot of the boilers, they don't even get the outdoor sensor installed. They just leave them out sometimes. I've talked to a few of the boiler manufacturers, and they have told me 60% of their wall hung condensing boilers do not have an outdoor sensor on it. So unfortunately, those are all the guys that are not on our webinars.
Right. And I would just say to them, say to those contractors, because it's the contractor making that call. I think you're right, Jim and Dave. I think you're absolutely right. Would those contractors tell the customer that says, I'm going to put in this really great boiler, but I'm only going to give you maybe 50% of its capabilities, meaning you're paying for 100% of it, but I'm only going to give you half of it because I don't want you to bother me after it's done, because I think you might. That's the conversation, right? Would anybody have that conversation with a homeowner? Because I don't want you to be a pain in the ass to me. I'm only going to give you half of this $10,000 boiler or whatever it costs. It boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. At that point, give them a cast iron boiler,
And put that on outdoor reset. And
yeah, put that on outdoor reset.
Just about the same as that condensing boiler that's not condensing.
Yeah, cast iron boiler with the outdoor reset that's built in. They kind of have those now. It has to have some sort of weather modification system. Give them a cast iron boiler and Delta T pumps, the Delta T pump, and that sucker's going to work about as well as it possibly can. That's as good as a cast iron boiler can run, in my opinion. But yeah, if you're saying I don't want to have the phone, the homeowners will complain. That's a preemptive move on the contractor's part. Ask him if the customer is okay with then paying $10,000 but only getting $5,000 worth of heat. I don't know. I really don't think that would go over very well. I think that would go over worse than having to have the discussion about how the new boiler's working differently. That's just my thought. What do I know? Anyway, yep, that's a great point, Jim. That's a very great. Yeah. And that's exactly how it would go over, Jim. You're right. Oh, goodness. How are you, Jim? I miss you. That's one of the worst things about COVID is I don't get to see the people out there like Richard McGrath, who's left us already, or Jeff House, or all of you guys out there that we've been together before, Jimmy and everybody else. That's the worst part of our end of the business because I can't travel. I can't go anywhere. But it is what it is. And you're a grandpa for the second time. Oh, that's right. You told me that a couple weeks ago. Congratulations, grandpa. When I first met you, you were just barely a paw. Way back in 1995, if you remember that very well. That was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. All righty, folks. Any more questions coming in? This is your chance. This is your chance. You've got Batman and Robin, who can't spell his own name, Grayson.
That's not my name. I'm Burt Ward. There's no Y's in Burt Ward now.
Did you change it?
I did.
You did. You're Burt Ward. There you go. That's the actor, Burt Ward. That's weird there, Carl. Okay. Well, hey, folks, any more questions you have? We still got 44 of you out there, or about 40 of you out there. Any more questions? And do we have the guys from the guys from Mechanical Hub went to bed already? I think at their age they really need their rest. So I'm glad they went. Don't tell them I said that.
It's on recording though.
No, tell them I said that.
Yeah, they probably won't watch the end of the webinar. So there you go.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Yeah. There you go. All right. Great question. Batman's greatest nemesis. Nemesis. Who can talk? Nemesis. Boy. Well, I mean, there were so many minor ones in the TV show, right? I mean, you had Mr. Freeze, you had King Tut, you had all these weird one-time or two-time Louis the Lilac. There you go. Yeah. Poison Ivy, Mad Hatter, all these weird ones that just showed up into Gotham City. Yeah, Mad Hatter was Milton Berle. That's right. That's right. But I mean, the big four, was the Joker, the Riddler, the Penguin, and Catwoman, right?
Yep.
I mean, there was some serious tension between Batman and Catwoman. I mean, you knew that even as a 6-year-old watching that, you say, there's something going on here, man. I would think the worst of the Joker, the Riddler, and the Penguin was probably the Joker. The Riddler, I mean, come on, they couldn't even keep the same actor the whole time. They went from Frank Gorshin to John Astin, who was Gomez Addams, right? There was Mr. Freeze, Otto Preminger, that's right. But the Joker was Cesar Romero through the whole thing, and he was incorrigible. You couldn't do anything to that guy. He was nuts, okay? So the Joker to me was the worst. Just like Heath Ledger in the movie, Cesar Romero, I think, was the worst. The Penguin was the most annoying. This little guy walking around going, rah, 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 nuts. Riddle me this Batman, the Riddler. He was kind of annoying too. Catwoman, okay. Okay. Do you know, Dave, the 3 actresses who played Catwoman?
I do not. I do not. That's not useless information that I have in my head. I'm sorry.
I keep all sorts of useless. The first and by far the best was Julie Newmar. Okay. She was, the last was Eartha Kitt. Carl had that one. Eartha Kitt was the last Catwoman. In between was Lee Merriweather. Lee Merriweather played Catwoman in the movie, the motion picture, the original motion picture in '66 Batman. But Julie Newmar was the best. Lee Merriweather, Eartha Kitt were okay, but they weren't Julie Newmar. You're always a little bit disappointed, when those ones came on. So that's my feeling on the whole Batman Nemesis thing. Okay, that was just the Joker was the worst of the bunch. Here's one. I remember having a record album of the audio from the TV show. I had a record album, and there was Frank Gorshin as the Riddler had one of the best riddles, and I remember it today. Okay, 3 men are in a boat. All right, 3 men are in a boat. They have 4 cigarettes and no matches. How do they smoke? And yes, Robert, you're absolutely right. That's one of the reasons why I like redheads, was Batgirl. 3 men in a boat, 4 cigarettes, no matches. How do they smoke? This was on Batman. I remember this very well. See if anybody out there can figure it out. 3 men in a boat, 4 cigarettes, no matches. How do they smoke? Manson says carefully.
Yeah, it's a wooden boat. Yeah, be careful. Yeah, we don't like fire on boats.
It doesn't matter what kind of a boat it is.
We don't like fire on boats.
No. 3 men in a boat, 4 cigarettes, no matches. I'll flip all the cards and tell you. You throw one of the cigarettes overboard and you make the boat a cigarette lighter? There you go. Throw one of the cigarettes overboard and you make the boat a cigarette lighter. Oh, those clever guys. That was the Riddler.
Yes.
That was a Frank Gorshin
That was
one.
the Riddler. Yeah, that was a Riddler. Yep. There you go.
Okay. What's your favorite condensing boiler nowadays, Dave?
I don't have one. I don't have a favorite boiler.
No?
No, I don't. It's they all come out with all really neat features in them nowadays. And if you are trying to come out with one for your area, for your customer base, I would go with the one that you have the best relationship with, meaning the rep in the area. What rep are you using? And obviously make sure you look up the Takeo rep and use the boiler that he's got. No, I'm kidding. I would say the one that you get the most service on, based on the rep agency that you got there, your wholesaler, that they've got parts, pieces, boilers that are there, that you can supply to your customer base. So that's because, and you know what? I'm finding every wholesaler nowadays got 10, 12 different boilers. I mean, condensing boilers now, I think there's 36 different ones out there.
Yeah.
So it's hard to come up with a decision on which one's best. If it's going to be 96% efficient, hey man, it's 96% efficient. Find the one that matches your house, and matches the heat load before I do anything like that. Bob says to me, yeah, he says the one that uses Takeo as an OEM. Yes, there you go.
Absolutely. Now that would be my
That's
choice right there.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't have any particular one in mind, so to speak. So there's so much cool stuff, and the tech is growing and changing so fast nowadays. So ModCons first came out, no modulation. I remember the first Munchkin that came out. I'd put a T50 in my house, that didn't modulate. No outdoor sensor, no controls on that. Now I got a boiler that does me 5-to-1, and people look at that as archaic. Oh my God, there's ones that are at a 12-to-1. I think I heard a 20-to-1 coming out. I can't keep up anymore. One, I can't go to the trade shows anymore to really find out what's out there anymore. So, but yeah, as Shane says, the one that you can repair and service the most easiest. That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. And again, I think Dave's right. The relationship you have, and you go up the chain. You start with the wholesaler, the best relationship you have with your wholesaler. Most contractors I've found, they may buy from 3 or 4 different wholesalers, but there's that one that gets most of the business. The one that you have the best relationship with, the one that you feel is the most knowledgeable and helpful when it comes to helping you size your systems and helping you work these things out. That's the one you're going to obviously congregate towards. And then then again, so it starts with the wholesaler. Which one do you have the best relationship with? And then you work your way backwards up to where what rep is working with you, which rep is reaching out to you and developing that relationship, so you can find out, you can work with them and they'll help you. And then take that to the next step, to the manufacturer. Which manufacturer do you have a relationship with, if you in fact do? So those are all the things those are all ingredients, and it's going to be different for everybody, because as Dave alluded to, there's no crap out there. There's no garbage, there really isn't. There's all pretty good stuff, and just find out what works for you and what makes the most sense. I think that's the most important thing for you.
And we're not saying that just to be PC here, because we deal with a lot of the boiler manufacturers out there and the OEMs and whatnot. So, no, that's the way I feel. And
Yeah.
I used to get that all the time. Back when I did tech support, and I'd have homeowners call me up and ask, and I'm just like, you got to go with somebody that, one, you're comfortable working with, and two, trust what he's going to offer as a contractor. So as a homeowner, you need to trust the contractor, that the contractor did his research, and he's going to go with this brand here. So, and yeah, but like I said, like Doug says, yeah, they're all equal, and whatnot, there's no garbage out there. If
Right.
a company made garbage products, they will be in business for a very, very short time.
Yeah. And here's the other thing.
Yeah, they get the reputation. They get the reputation sometimes of garbage. Like I remember Munchkin used to get a very horrible reputation because they were garbage. But that's because they kind of revolutionized it, and not a lot of people understood how to do primary, secondary piping properly. And they always blamed it on the boiler when it was actually a system issue, not a boiler issue.
True that. True that. And the other thing too is, there's product evolution. You know how you can always tell a pioneer. Frank Baylor told me this a long time ago. You can always tell a pioneer because he's the guy with the arrows in his back. The first ones out there are always going to have issues. And even now, it doesn't matter who makes what. Okay, every manufacturer has problems. Everybody, Taco, Grundfos, B&G, Velo, Armstrong, NTI, Weil McLean, Burnham, everybody who's ever tried to make anything for sale has had a problem at some point in their existence. And sometimes it's none of us, nobody does it intentionally. It just happens. Stuff happens, and you got to fake. The key is, how do you deal with it? Who helps? You got to own your mistakes as a manufacturer. You got to own your mistakes, and you got to make it right. That's one of the things that makes the difference. So I guess that's kind of the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. So it all happens, and everybody, and it costs everybody money all up and down the line, unfortunately. But it happens. It's you just try to minimize those mistakes and do the very best you can. And we've had our ups and downs, and we make a damn good product. We're not perfect. Nobody else is either. So we try. So it's a matter of A, how do you take care of your problems, and B, what kind of stuff do you do to help your customers be as successful as they want to be, right? It's one of the reasons we do this, because it's our job. Johnny White's given us the green light to go ahead and train. Taco has 5 full-time trainers. There's not another company out there that has 5 full-time trainers in our arena. We have 5 full-time trainers out there to help you guys. So that's, again, one of the things we think sets us apart. But this isn't a sales presentation. Just want to let you know. All righty, folks. I think we might be done. A last round up for questions, and if we have any more, that would be cool. Train building inspectors. How about herding cats? Let's try herding cats too. We have had building inspectors in our classes. We've had that happen. We have had building inspectors in our classes, which is fantastic. Carl, you're a building inspector, and that's one of the reasons we love you. You're here, man. You're here. But we building inspectors, plumbing inspectors, our doors are open for everybody, absolutely everybody. So that's kind of the way we look at it. But I mean, not homeowners per se, you understand what I'm saying, but if you're in the industry and you want to get trained, we will do what we can. We will absolutely do what we can. Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate that. Sean, thank you. Really appreciate that. And guys, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the presentation. Carl, you seem to be a multifaceted inspector. So you're building inspector, plumbing inspector, and an electrical inspector. Oh man, you're an inspector general or a general inspector. Very cool.
Sounds like a man and an instructor that doesn't get much sleep, it sounds like.
Yeah, Carl, chill, man. You gotta take a break, buddy. All right. Well, hey, listen, everybody. Thank you so much for another great evening. It's been a fun, almost 2 hours now. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And to my young ward, Dick Grayson, aka Robin, thank you, and good luck tomorrow taking over the ship. Other than the obvious improvement, they'll never know the difference. I mean, seriously.
That's right.
So, all right. And guys, we will see you all next week. When, Dave?
Same bat time. Same bat channel.
Same bat channel. And this time we mean it. All righty, folks. Take care, everybody. We will see you next week. Be good.
Enjoy. See you guys.